Hi everyone, I'm Craig from Wrist Enthusiast, and today I'm at Watches and Wonders with IWC CEO Christoph Grainger-Herr. How are you doing?
Good to see you, Greg. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining. So I was very excited about the new Portugieser release.
Yeah.
When I think about new releases, how do you decide what design points, especially when you're redesigning redesigning an old collection? So like the Portugieser has been around for around 85 years.
Yeah.
How do you decide what changes to make?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's not an old collection. I think it's a collection that's been going in quite an iconic design ever since 1939. And I think the beauty of the Portugieser is that it comes from a tool watch, instrument watch DNA. It was all about legibility. It's basically a nautical instrument, a marine chronometer. And it developed into a watch that is really a classical watch with a forward-looking modern twist. It's never a retro watch, not an old watch. It's always contemporary. And I think when you evolve a watch line like that, you have to be conscious of always being current, despite the design having this amount of consistency. So the approach is completely different from saying when you do a pilot and you say, okay, what sports features do I bring, what materials, what colors? In the Portugieser, it's always a lot more subtle. So you think about the case dimensions, you think about apertures, you think about movements, technical functions, and then you think about dial finishing, that all the steps of refinement that are going into Portugieser are much more subtle. So this time around, we changed the entire case construction to really bring a slimmer case side and to bring double box glass and have a lighter appearance and really a big opening that dial really comes out of you. And then at the same time, we opted for these 15-layer lacquered dials, which really give you a great depth and a great effect that we didn't have before. And then you add the color element to it. And then you bring, certain colors like Dune or Obsidian, where you bring the Horizon Blue, which pops a bit more. And that combined with new functions like the Eternal Calendar and the Tourbillon Day and Night really bring a line that is completely updated, that feels current and fresh, but it's really in complete consistency with all of the development of Portugieser over the years.
Yeah, and you were talking about the Dune and the Horizon colors. I found those to be very unique. And obviously it's different than what a lot of other brands are doing with kind of the dark sunray blue dials and maybe a green dial. How did you decide to go in that direction? Even though they're a little bit more understated, the actual design is I think a little bit more bold.
Yeah. So the process that we go through is that, me as an architectural designer, I'm really frustrated by the process in watchmaking that you cannot computer visualize the end result. When we do an environment like this, we can have a computer rendering and it's 99% accurate. In watches, you really have to prototype a lot and you have to prototype really early on. So I take a lot of color samples and we really try and fine tune something that works on the wrist. You put it behind glass, you put it on the wrist, and then you see which colors actually speak to you. And often the outcome may be completely different from what you had in mind. But in the end, you see one combo that absolutely works when you have gold numerals on the Dune and all of a sudden it lifts you and you think, oh wow, that is it. So sometimes there's an element which is in search of creativity where you don't really plan the development in detail. You have a general direction, and then in the end, you have to feel a color and say, well, this is still timeless, still iconic, it's still Portugieser, but it adds some freshness to it. And like you say, also a bit of coldness in the
So when you were designing it, you may have thought it was going to look something else, but when you got it, you're like, I like this even more. But
we always do a big range of color samples, different combinations, because in watchmaking, you have to try it in the mechanism. There's no other way. And the effects you're getting from a watch when you wear it on your wrist with all the light reflection coming from it, this you really have to feel. Like last year as well, the teal color on the Ingenieur, the Antler, was a spur of a moment thing where we just had this one sample that worked particularly well on the hard polished, hard brushed steel case. And in the end, it just wore so well at work for 3 days. It's like, got to do it.
And that was my favorite Ingenieur as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of collectors and journalists have been talking about the Portugieser, and I really feel like some of the changes you made, like you talked about, with the slimmed down case and with the kind of domed crystal, are things that people have been asking for. How do you take, collectors and clients, opinions without letting them control the process of design?
Yeah, so look, we take all the feedback on board, always, wherever we get feedback, be it from journalists, from retailers, customers, wherever it comes from, social media, of course. And in the end, of course, you have to take design decisions, and it's not democratic at that point. So for me, it's always a blend of listening, testing the feedback, and then choosing as designers, do we agree, do we not agree? Because ultimately, some of the biggest iconic products in the world of luxury, you could have done a focus group or market research that would give you that product. And in the end, you have a huge hit, by something maybe even where at first people were saying, oh, I'm not so sure. Then in the end, it was huge. So there is a limitation to market research in our environment. And you have to, at some point, you need that moment of creativity. And then you need a lot of belief as well. You need to be bold and sometimes just go for it as well. And sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. There's no guarantee. But I think that X factor of creativity is what makes this industry so unique.
And why did you decide that this was the year to redesign the Portugieser? You had the Ingenieur last year, and I guess the pilot's almost an ever-evolving thing. But the but the Portugieser this year, why this year?
No, I really think also it not only does it fit the development timeline of different movements, the eternal calendar, the turbulent day and night coming in, but also you have this effect in the pandemic where everything went very casual. Sports watch focus made a lot of sense. Post-pandemic, you had a celebration of color. There was a big explosion of joy of life, basically. So you have a lot more expressive watches. And now I feel we're in a phase where it gets a little bit more understated again, a little bit more timeless. So I feel bringing our dress watch, which was, half classical watch, half sporty edge, is the right tone of voice for me for the situation we're in at the moment. I hope that bringing that upgrade really reinvigorates that interest as well in our Portugieser collection and really like great everyday products like
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think the Portugieser, it's an everyday wear in addition to being a dress watch. Now, I always think of IWC as a brand that, like, when I think of perpetual calendars, I think of IWC, whether it's in the Portugieser or the big pilot. How did you decide to handle the eternal calendar? And I was talking to someone when I was walking around, and they said maybe only 2 or 3 other brands have really attempted this.
Yeah, absolutely. And to deal with the limitations of the regular sort of Julian calendar, perpetual calendar, was obvious. As engineers, you're never satisfied with what you already have. So you want to push it further. But the key to IWC is we want to make it in an engineered way. We don't want to add 450 cogwheels and levers and mechanisms. We want to make it so that it's robust, that it's wearable, that it's usable, and still only operated by a single crown. And that's why the idea of the program wheel, we added only 3 additional wheels to make a gearing from a regular month all the way to a 400-year wheel, which gives you the full cycle of perpetual calendar years and leap years. But in the end of the day, it's an ingeniously pure and simple solution. Same on the moonphase, 45 million years of accuracy out of only 3 additional wheels. It's an engineered solution. Everyone can make a watch that size and just pack it all in. But our idea was really, how can we take the size of the perpetual calendar module and fit the eternal calendar into the same module size? That's what we did with the eternal.
And how long does the development of something like that take?
8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
And how do you test that? How do I know that in 45 billion years, I'm only going to be 1 day away?
So funnily enough, the moonphase art is mathematical.
Okay.
So it's just down to the gearing. So you don't have to run it for 45 million years to know that you have that accuracy. And on the eternal calendar itself, the 400 years, you can just fast track run it without, and you see that it works.
Do you think that's more of a showcase of IWC's technical prowess than something that's like maybe actually practical?
So I'm not so sure on that. Yeah, at the moment, yes, the launch is a showcase of what we can do. But since it's industrialized and since it's not a concept watch, I really think it could be another level and segment within our complications offering where in the future we could have more watches that have an eternal calendar function. So you have 2 tiers, perpetual and eternal. I think it's absolutely possible.
And how
practical it is. I mean, it just saves you a job. You don't need to adjust in 2100.
or my grandchildren or great-grandchildren.
Yeah, exactly. So
or when we're all uploaded to the cloud, right?
Yeah, exactly. A last analog thing to keep you
the last analog.
Keep you grounded.
So I am, a big fan of Gerald Genta, and I feel like I have to ask. One of the things that I was wondering was whether this year would be the year that you kind of expanded the relaunched Ingenieur, maybe with a chronograph or in different metals. Is that something we might see in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we consciously made the decision to launch the Ingenieur last year in the very pure and simple automatic 40 form in steel and titanium. We were very happy with how the Ingenieur was received, and we are building it into a whole collection, and you will see some of that later this year.
Later this year. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been great, and I'll see you around.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.